trash, garbage, rubbish, waste. All words that can accurately describe Warner Bros. Yes, I've thrown many tomatoes at them, I know, but they just keep making it so easy. They're a spitball magnet. And it can really, a large part of it, be traced back to one decision, a patient zero, David Zaslav. Since he took over 4 years ago now, actually, it has just been so bad for that company. All he does really is cancel projects that are pretty close to finished, or just get rid of things that they already have. And I know Warner Bros. Was in a bad spot before. It was in a dark place before David Zaslav came in there with the, knight in shining armor, with radiant sunbeams shining on him, potentially being their savior. But this would be like trying to cure alcoholism with heroin. Now, I have no doubt there are some shareholders that do view him as the cure to the disease of money loss that Warner Bros. Was afflicted with. Through his innovative strategy, his remarkable genius scheme of just getting rid of everything, just cutting everything Warner Bros. Has to squeeze some doubloons on the bottom line for the shareholders, it has worked for them, I suppose, at least based on what I can see. But on the grand scheme of things, his strategy has basically just been, hey, you're excited for that? Well, there's a good chance we're just going to can it right before it comes out. Or, hey, we finished this thing that you were excited for, but we decided not to release it because we're just going to go for a tax break on it instead. It's a fucking terrible strategy if you're anyone that likes content. David Zaslav is the opposite of King Midas. He's fucking King ripe ass, because everything he touches turns to ass instead of gold. He's got the cheese touch, and it has infected every part of this company. They are struck with the orb of confusion and can't break out. They just made the baffling decision to shut down Monolith Productions. The studio behind beloved titles like Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, with a highly anticipated Wonder Woman game still in the pipeline that, from my understanding, was pretty far along in development. They have now just come out and axed that company. Not just Monolith, they also shut down Player First Games as well as Warner Bros. San Diego. But Monolith is the most surprising one because everyone loves those games. And there's a lot of faith in Monolith as a company. So there was a lot of hype around this game that's been in development for a long time, and now will never see the light of day. Much like a lot of other things Warner Bros. Has done. I've already talked about this a lot. There's no reason to regurgitate it, but I will briefly mention them just refusing to release Coyote vs. Acme even though it's completed. I hate this fucking company, man. It's crazy. But in this case, they didn't complete the project yet. It was still actively in development. And now it won't see the light of day unless it leaks somehow. But what this also means is they're burying the Nemesis system in the coffin with Monolith here. The Nemesis system is one of the most innovative systems we've seen in the last decade. It was a really cool feature that was present in Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, and Warner Bros. Patented it, which is why you haven't seen it outside of those two games. And the thought would be that they'd use it in their products because they own the patent, but no. Instead, they crossed their arms and said, it's my toy to not play with. You can't touch it. It's mine to do nothing with. And now that they've killed Monolith, it truly is going to be something that they're going to do nothing with, I imagine. And that patent doesn't expire until 2036. It's so infuriating how dog shit Warner Bros. Is. Like, they're not even doing business, they're doing shitness. Like, I hate to keep bringing up things I've already talked about a lot in regards to this company, but Coyote vs. Acme, they finished that movie. It had like a $80 million budget, I can't quite recall, and instead of releasing it, they just decided to claim a tax loss, which didn't recoup the budget or anything. It barely even made up for half of their total spend on the production in the first place. Great work, David. Big gold star for that one. Let's go ahead and see what he had to say, though, about gaming in general with Warner Bros. So the main goal with the structuring of Warner Bros. Game development studios is that they want to focus on 4 really powerful games, according to the lobotomite himself, David Zaslav. Really powerful games like Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, which lost them 200 million clams, by the way. Rocksteady wasn't on the chopping block. I love Rocksteady for their previous work. I fucking hate Suicide Squad, plus that company doesn't have, like, the most important people at it from back in the day. I don't know if they'll turn it around, but Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was one of the worst games of 2024, and yet Monolith, who actually has majority bangers, heaters, and their last 2 games have been super heaters, somehow they're the ones that get axed? Okay, fucking make it make sense, David. Now, what he's actually referring to is Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. Those are their key franchises, and they don't want to, like, venture out beyond there, even though I think this is super stupid to just marry your whole fucking development studios to just these 4 properties. I have said for a long time, I think the path forward for these studios is that they do a lot of smaller projects that don't cost as much or don't take as long to develop, and instead focus on being creative and unique. So that way there's not as much spend, but there's a lot more potential. Things like a Hi-Fi Rush, for example. Like, there's, I think, significantly more potential in that as opposed to just making a fucking $200 million Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League loss. But anyway, here's the statement in its entirety. We've had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises. You've already failed. You haven't made the best games possible in a long, long time. Than Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios, Monolith, Player First Games, and Warner Bros. San Diego. This is a strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward. You know, interestingly enough, Wonder Woman's a DC game, huh? From a beloved developer? Why didn't that make it? I mean, it's part of your key franchise approach. What is the strategic direction here? To only put these properties in the hands of the worst developers? Like, I don't really know. I'm a little confused, to be honest with you. Monolith was extremely talented with a lot of faith in their brand, and you gave them a DC property, which you're saying is your key franchise. So why would you take them off of that in order to instead have Rocksteady work on another super stinker? Like, it's not like Monolith was working on something obscure no one knows, you know, like Dino Custodians, Janitors in Space, Prehistoric Plowing. Like, it's a well-known IP with an extremely well-known developer that people love. It just doesn't make sense. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character, and unfortunately this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. And I think this is all code for not live service enough. We couldn't nickel and dime our community enough, so we had to let them go. We couldn't find ways of monetizing Wonder Woman to the same inefficient level as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. This is another tough decision, as we recognize Monolith's storied history of delivering epic fan experiences through amazing games. We greatly admire the passion of the 3 teams and thank every employee for their contributions. As difficult as today is, we remain focused on and excited about getting back to producing high-quality games for our passionate fans and developed by our world-class studios and getting our games business back to profitability and growth in 2025 and beyond. You imbecile. David Zaslav's brain is so fascinating because it really feels like it's been wired incorrectly. Like there were some screws loose and then it got put back together and the neural pathways were all cattywampus. Because it seems he lacks a fundamental understanding of what growth means in gaming here. Typically, you wouldn't want to cut your most talented developer working on a huge IP before it releases. That doesn't seem smart. Now you've just eaten a huge loss for the 8 years of development, and that product will never see the light of day, so you can't even begin to recoup it. It just seems like a stupid decision, especially when your key strategic plan is to focus on one of the IPs that your most talented developer was working on. So now you're going to take that same IP and just give it to a most likely worse developer. How are you growing? You've downsized, sure. You've effectively downsized, and now you'll stop spending money on the salary of all the developers that you just fired, but you didn't grow. You stayed in the same spot, just squeezed a couple extra pennies out by firing so many people, and now you don't even have a game to show for it for all this loss that you've just eaten. Show me where the growth is on that, because I must be missing it. I just think it's a terrible decision, and I hate the David Zaslav strategy to everything of just get rid of everything, and if we're not spending any money, that means we're not losing any money. I hate it. I really don't like it. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, especially because I love Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, and the fact that we're not going to see anything else from Monolith now. And let's say like pie in the sky, Monolith gets to stay together, someone else takes the entire team intact and they work on something. Well, they still can't use the Nemesis system they created because Warner Bros. Owns the patent, at least to my understanding. So yeah, Warner Bros. Is trash. That's about it. See ya.